Welcome to eLesson 2, Cost Changes in Vendor Portal. During this lesson, you will learn two ways to submit cost changes via the Vendor Portal: electronic import and manual entry. We'll cover electronic import first, where you will learn how to download your cost book to create a spreadsheet for entering your cost changes and how to import the completed spreadsheet into PowerHQ via the Vendor Portal. Then, we'll show you to use the Vendor Cost Entry module to check the status of cost submissions, correct any errors in the data, and enter cost changes manually versus via a spreadsheet. And finally, we'll cover how to access additional resources and support. First, let's go over a few key concepts on costs and cost zones. Regular cost is the cost of an item without any adjustments. Web pricing vendors will no longer submit a net cost, which includes adjustments for promotional items. You will submit your base cost for Cost Zone 99 for an item. If you are going to submit an adjustment to that base cost, these are submitted separately. Submission of regular costs via EDI or Vendor Portal. Biweekly, submitted by the 10th or the 25th of the month to apply to the 1st or 16th of the next month, respectively. Weekly, as identified in the contract, submitted 5 days prior to the start date. DECA Form 4015, submitted when a new item is added. PowerHQ will populate an end date for a regular cost only when a new regular cost is submitted. At the end of a promotion or cost adjustment period, the item cost will revert back to the regular cost. PowerHQ will not accept a regular cost change for a date with an active adjustment. Last in submission applies only if the cutoff date has not passed. How cost zones work in Vendor Portal. Your contracts and agreements with DECA define the cost zones and stores you serve. These are defined in the Vendor Store Table module on a vendor and contract basis. The stores associated with any defined cost zone will vary between vendors. You need to provide a cost for Cost Zone 99. This will be the base cost of the item for all cost zones and stores you serve. Cost Zone 99 is equivalent to EDI Price Zone DODAC HQCAAA on the EDI 879. A separate cost entry must be entered for any cost zone or zones where the base cost of the item is different than Cost Zone 99. So, what is the importance of Cost Zone 99? In the case of a cost record having an end date without a future cost to change to, the system will revert back to Cost Zone 99. Any item in the system without a cost assigned to Cost Zone 99 will risk system error that will result in an adverse impact on invoices and retails in our stores. Please note, each time a new cost for Cost Zone 99 is submitted via EDI 879 or the Vendor Portal, the new base cost 99 will override all other cost zones. This will require a new cost entry for each cost zone that continues to be different from the base cost 99. How do you know what cost zones and stores you are authorized to serve? The Vendor Portal makes it easy by providing an online vendor store table that identifies the cost zones and stores specific to your contract or agreement with DECA. As illustrated, some vendor contracts may be limited to a small number of stores, while others include hundreds of stores. You can filter the vendor store table by store ID, DODAC, store name, distributor code, or cost zone to find the information you need. Additionally, a crosswalk of cost zones, regions, and pricing DODAX is provided in the Vendor Reference Guide. Now, let's learn how to submit cost changes via electronic import. There are 4 basic steps to submitting cost changes via electronic import. First, export your cost book and save as an Excel spreadsheet. Then enter your cost changes into the spreadsheet. Import the cost spreadsheet using the Electronic Imports module. And you can immediately check the status of the changes you submitted in the Vendor Cost Entry module. This is a more detailed view of the 4 steps. This diagram is included in the Vendor Reference Guide on commissaries.com. Step 1. Download the cost book. The cost book serves 2 primary functions. It allows you to view current cost and other information on all the items you provide to DECA under a specific contract or agreement, showing the unique vendor number. You see what DECA sees. And it allows you to create and download a spreadsheet to enter and submit cost changes electronically. To get your cost book, open the cost book module. The cost book displayed is based on your vendor number and name. To see all items in your cost book, just click Apply. The total number of pages and records for the designated contract or agreement are displayed. You can sort by any column to change the ways the results are displayed. Unless you want to submit cost changes for all the items on a contract, you will want to use the filters to narrow down the results. Otherwise, you may have to delete a large number of rows from the spreadsheet. First, select your filter. You can filter by UPC, brand code, start date, and/or cost zone. The example shows filtering by brand code. 2. Select the logic statement. Typically, you can use the default logic statement displayed. 3. Enter the value or use the Find icon if shown to select the value. 4. Click Add. If a specific value is required, indicated by the Find icon, click Add again. 5. Click Apply. 6. The total number of pages and records satisfying the filter criteria are displayed. Remember, you can use multiple filters to narrow down the results even more. Note that the UPC EAN appears multiple times in the grid. The UPC EAN is listed for each cost zone served per your contract or agreement. An example of using the Find icon and wildcards to filter the cost book is provided in the Vendor Reference Guide, Section 3.3. The cost book includes 18 columns of data for each item as shown. You will use the future case cost, start date, and end date columns to enter your cost changes. Remember, you can sort on any column to rearrange the data. You can export the cost book with all items or for items based on filtering, for your internal use or to use as a template for submitting cost changes via electronic import. 1. Once you have the data you need, click the Export button. 2. On the pop-up, select the CSV, delimited file format to open the report in an Excel spreadsheet and click the Generate Report button. 3. Click OK on the confirmation message. 4. Open the View Generated Report module. Double-click in the row to select the report you want. The report you just created will show at the top of the list. Click the View icon and click Open on the pop-up at the bottom of the screen. Now, let's watch these steps in action. In the Cost Book module, click Apply to show all items. Click Export. Choose CSV, delimited format. Click OK in the confirmation box. Return to the Module panel and select View Generated Report. Click on your report and then click View. The report surfaces in an Excel spreadsheet. Step 2. Enter cost changes. The generated report opens in the Excel spreadsheet format. Again, note that the UPC EAN for an item is listed for each cost zone served per your contract or agreement. For each item that you want to submit a cost change for, enter the future case cost and start date for cost zone 99. This is the base cost of the item and will apply to all cost zones and stores that you serve. You only need to enter a cost for the other cost zones if the cost of the item is different than the base cost. A future case cost amount can be calculated by multiplying the future unit cost by the case pack, column G in the example. Enter the end date only if applicable. Delete any rows that do not contain cost changes. Save the file as an Excel file on your PC. The system will not import a CSV file. You can use the exported costbook spreadsheet or your own spreadsheet to enter and import cost changes. The mandatory fields must be included for the electronic import to be successful. Other fields may be included. The mandatory fields are UPC EAN, future case cost, start date, and cost zone. The column headings for the mandatory fields must be labeled as shown here and in Section 3.4 of the Vendor Reference Guide for the electronic import to be successful. The columns can be in any order within the spreadsheet. Formulas cannot be used in any of the mandatory columns on the spreadsheet for the import to be successful. If you use formulas to calculate a field, do it in a separate column or spreadsheet and copy the column and paste it as values under the mandatory column heading. Let's look at a completed cost spreadsheet and how the cost zones work. In the top example, the future case cost for cost zone 99 applies to all cost zones. Since there were not region overrides, costs were not entered for the individual cost zones. In the middle example, the future case cost for cost zone 99 applies to cost zone 61, but there is a region override for cost zone 11. In the bottom example, the future case cost, which is the same for all cost zones, was entered. Although not necessary, the system will accept the submission. Step 3. Import the cost spreadsheet. To import and submit the completed cost spreadsheet, first, return to the Modules panel and select Electronic Imports. 2. Click on the New button. A secondary window opens. 3. Enter 0 for the transaction type ID. 4. Click Load from Excel. 5. Click Select Excel File. The document library on your PC will open. Find and double-click on the Excel file you saved. 6. The selected file name appears on the screen. 7. Click the Load button. 8. The load status will display as a green bar. 9. The imported data displays in the lower section. 10. Click Save at the bottom of the screen. 11. A confirmation screen advises that after import, you will not be able to edit input data. Continue. Click OK. 12. A second confirmation screen advises the import was inserted successfully. Click OK. The Results tab will display. It shows the total number of rows submitted, the number of rows successfully inserted, the number of rows that were not processed or imported due to errors, the number of rows that were processed but received warnings based on business rules, the number of rows that were excluded from the import due to no cost change data in those rows. This could be a large number if you do not filter the cost book and/or delete rows without cost changes. In this example, all rows were processed without warnings or errors. If you want to view the imported data, click on the Import tab. Click the blue X at the top of the screen to close the window. Now, let's watch Vendor Portal at work by importing a cost change spreadsheet. Click on the New button on the Electronic Import module. Select 0 and click Apply for Cost Transaction Type. Click Load from Excel. Select your file and double-click to insert. Click the Load button. Note the green bar indicates the load status. Data will display. Click OK on the confirmation screen. Click OK on Successful Import screen. The Result tab surfaces for review. We just watched a successful cost import example. Sometimes imports result in errors or warnings. Warnings alert you to conditions that are generally outside the scope of defined business rules, but the records will be imported. This example shows warnings based on violations for the minimum number of days to submit a change and the maximum percentage of change allowed. Please refer to the Vendor Reference Guide, Section 7, for additional information on business rules. An error condition indicates that the record was not successfully imported. An error typically occurs when a mandatory data value is not provided. In this example, only 12 of the 15 submitted items were inserted. The 3 items without a start date errored out and did not import. Please refer to the Vendor Reference Guide, Section 7, for additional information on error codes and messages. To correct and resubmit the items, you can import a corrected spreadsheet via the Electronic Imports module, or you can use the Vendor Cost Entry module to submit a correction. We'll talk more about that in step number 4. Step 4. Check the status and make corrections if needed. You can immediately check the status of your cost submission in the Vendor Cost Entry module. Remember, the system will apply or reject the cost changes based on defined business rules and filters. To see all your recent cost submissions, click Apply. The system will automatically display the most recent submissions at the top of the grid, or use filtering to find specific cost submissions. The grid will show the cost changes submitted in a stage status of applied, which is shown with a gray background, or rejected, which is shown with red text. For accountability, each entry contains a system-generated record status date and a change ID, which identifies the login of the user submitting the cost change. Click on any row to get the additional information sidebar. Here you will find current case and unit costs and other item information. If a change is rejected, you will see a reason code or EDI error code followed by the reason. The reason codes are defined in the Vendor Reference Guide. Also note that the Remove button is grayed out, which means it cannot be used to request a submitted cost be removed. In Vendor Cost Entry, you can filter the results by UPC EAN, start date, brand code, rejection reason code, and stage status. For example, If you wanted to see your rejected submissions, you would 1. Select Stage Status as the filter. 2. Keep the default logic statement as is. 3. Click on the down caret. 4. Select Rejected and click Apply on the drop-down. 5. Click Add. And 6. Click Apply. The system will display the rejected records only, and you can click on any row to get information on why it was rejected. There are 2 ways to correct and resubmit a cost change. Import a corrected spreadsheet via the Electronic Imports module, or use the Vendor Cost Entry module to submit a correction that will override the initial submission. If you have a large number of resubmissions, you would probably correct your spreadsheet for the items and resubmit. If you only have a few items, you can correct them immediately in the Vendor Cost Entry module. Submit cost changes via the Vendor Cost Entry. You can use the Vendor Cost Entry module to submit cost changes for a limited number of items instead of importing a spreadsheet. First, open the Vendor Cost Entry module. 2. Click in the top blank row. 3. Enter the UPC, EAN, or PLU number and tab or click off the entry. The system will populate the basic item data. 4. Enter the cost change under Future Case Cost. This is the case cost, not the unit cost, and it is the base cost with no adjustments. 5. Enter the cost zone that the change applies to. Remember, you can use the Vendor Store Table module or the Find icon to identify the cost zones or regions and stores you serve within those cost zones under a specific contract or agreement. Cost Zone 99, the base cost zone, will apply the cost change to all cost zones and stores unless you specify otherwise. For any cost zone where the item cost is not the same as for Cost Zone 99, you must make an entry for that cost zone using steps 3 through 8. 6. Enter the start date. 7. Enter the end date if needed. Typically, this is left blank. 8. Click the plus sign to submit the entry and open a new row. You can continue to add additional cost changes. If you need to enter multiple cost zones for an item, use the Default Values editor to enter default values. You can also use Control-C to copy a UPC and Control-V to paste values such as UPCs and start dates into new rows, so you don't have to type it multiple times. Additional resources and support. In addition to the Vendor Portal online training, you can get additional information and step-by-step instructions in the Vendor Reference Guide, which is available on commissaries.com under Our Agency, About DECA, Business with DECA, Vendors/EBS. If you need additional assistance or support, you can contact the Vendor Portal Help Desk, which is available 24/7. Contact the Help Desk if you need guidance in using the Vendor Portal, login assistance and password reset support, or if you need to report a technical issue. For Vendor Portal Help Desk support, call 1-800-531-2222 and enter PIN 7780. Now that you know how to submit cost changes in the Vendor Portal, let's look at how to submit item adjustments for deals and promotions in eLesson 3.